It was the summer before my freshman year of high school. The year was 1998. My parents and younger brother were out of town and I was basking in the freedom of being home alone for an entire day. I spent most of the time shut up in my upstairs bedroom watching cable TV while I chatted on the phone with my friends because, three-way calling OMG. After a few hours of MTV watching and phone chatting, I decided it was time to relax in a bubble bath and read a Stephen King book because that was and is my favorite pastime. My bedroom and the bathroom are side by side on the second floor of the very large 3-story house that sat on the edge of a small town. My dad was a local pastor of this small town, so we would have random people show up of any hour of the day or night needing food and or money, and sometimes they could be very persistent. I was instructed that when home alone, I was not to answer doors. Just stay out of sight until the people would leave, then go about my day. This strategy had worked for years, and why change it now? On this particular day, all had been quiet. The bathroom was upstairs and out of sight of any doors, and it was the only interior door that locked, so I always felt relatively safe in there. I shut off my TV and hung up my phone. Yes, a corded wall phone. And went into the bathroom and ran a bubble bath. Once the tub was full, I climbed in and started reading my book. I got about a chapter in when all hell broke loose. I heard the sound of breaking glass coming from the kitchen below me. The room to the left of the foot of the stairs, also the room with the back door in it, which consisted of a giant double pane of really old glass. My mother was always scolding us for shutting the door too hard. She was convinced we would break it. The sound of breaking glass is followed by a loud voice, a man's voice, a man that was not my father. I got out of the tub as quickly and quietly as possible, grabbed the towel, closed the bathroom door, and slid the lock over. I stood at the door listening for what felt like an eternity. Then again from the kitchen, a man's voice, this time quickly followed by another man's voice. Jeez, 2 damn intruders were in my kitchen, and there I stood naked, dripping wet, with nothing but a bath towel to protect me. Now I am really full-blown panic. What was I supposed to do? I looked around the bathroom for weapons, and the best I could come up with was a plastic hand-lid toilet plunger. Like that's really going to help. At this point I realized that I haven't heard anyone for a couple of minutes, so I decided that I'm going to sneak to the top of the stairs and listen. Maybe they left after realizing we didn't have many items with street value. Armed with a toilet plunger, I unlocked the bathroom and tiptoed over to the top of the stairs. Within seconds, I heard them talking in the kitchen. I decided I needed to evacuate and plan a better weapon. I tiptoed back into the restroom and relocked the door. I knew they didn't have much time until they came to explore or rob the upstairs, so I needed to hurry. I knew that when I would go to the bottom of the stairs, I would be in full view of the kitchen, and the stairs creaked, so they would definitely hear me coming. I also knew that the base of the stairs led to the front door if I made a quick right. So if I could get down and out of the door before they realized what was going on, I might be okay. But if they heard me coming, I might have to fight for my life. So I needed a good weapon because it was at least going to be a 2-on-1 fight. I snuck back out of the bathroom and into my bedroom. The whole time I heard them in the kitchen area. The best thing I could come up with in my bedroom was a lighter and a bottle of hairspray. I will melt their faces off. I went back to the top of the stairs and listened again. They were still down there in the kitchen. I counted to 3 and made a run for it. Lighter and hairspray at the ready. I reached the landing and turned to glance at the kitchen. There were 2 tall, what I could only assume were men standing in the kitchen looking back at me. And it seemed like one of them were holding a huge knife. I bolted to my neighbor's house, which is also a police officer, and he let me in. I tried explaining the situation very frantically. He told me to just chill in his house and that he was going to call police. When the police arrived, the men were already gone. They stole a few valuables from the first floor, but I thank God that I escaped with my life. In 2014, I moved to England from Canada to gain work and travel experience and also to find myself. I ended up living in Essex with 3 other roommates. They were all women, all a bit older than I was. I was 24 at the time. Megan was 31, Sherry was 34, and Cassie was 38. Megan was from New York, Sherry from New Jersey, and Cassie from Poland. All four of us shared this 3-story flat. The back of our house was the living room and kitchen. The back wall was complete glass that looked out into the garden. The garden was completely fenced in. The house had an interesting dynamic, to say the least. Tons of stories from that time in my life. I adored all my roommates except Sherry. After living with Sherry for 7 months, I was over her antics. One day I came over from work. I locked the door, make myself something to eat, and go to bed. I brought some work home with me, so I am in my nightie with all these papers around me and my headphones on, jamming out. I had headphones on because Sherry was out to dinner with work friends. That meant booze, and then soon after that a tantrum was surely to come. I just didn't want to have to listen to her crazy screaming. I was working away and completely focused until I feel something. I look up to see a man standing over me. I don't register it right away and passively say, Sherry's room was on the 2nd floor, and continue to work. Sherry regularly brought strange man home. He doesn't leave. Again, Sherry's room is downstairs. You. Then he interrupts me.
I am not here for Sherry.
A cold chill iced my veins. My fight or flight kicked in just then. I started surveying the situation. I look him up and down. He has a bottle of booze in one hand and a knife in the other. He's about 5'10", wild muddy brown hair, and black eyes. He has a light blue polo shirt on, and a distinct Manchester accent. Once I focused in, I realized his eyes were black because his pupils were completely dilated. Shit, I was in trouble. I needed an escape plan. Unfortunately, this man was standing between me and the bedroom door. I needed to get downstairs, but I needed him to think that it was his idea. I decided to play along. Just then, he uses his knife to pop the cork of the booze bottle. I said, "Oh no, let's clean that up. I prefer to drink out of a proper flute anyways." He nodded, replying,
You're a proper classy bird. Let's go.
I try to act as natural as possible. I try not to show that I am shaking all over and try to gain control over my breathing. We take the long journey down to the main floor of my flat. All 3 floors. He has the back of my nightie bunched up in one hand, and I can feel the point of the knife graze my back with his other. I was trying to playfully speak with him as we walked down the stairs. I couldn't tell you what I was saying. I was most likely rambling. I couldn't hear anything over my heart beating in my eyes. We get to the bottom of the stairs, and there's a hallway to my left that leads to the front door. On my right, which is much closer to us, is the kitchen and living room. We make our way into the kitchen. I point to the cabinets where there are glasses. He said he knew where they were at, and starts towards them. I now had the kitchen tables in between us. It was time to run. I burst into a sprint down the hallway towards the door. My hands fumbled over the lock, shaking and sweating. I swing open the door to see 2 men walking across the street. They must have been walking home from the train. There was a big train station in front of our home. I call out to them for help, and suddenly, I fall onto the floor. Little pebbles piercing my skin sent sharp pains where they jabbed. The intruder pushed me out of the way to run and escape. One of the men chased after the intruder, while the other said for me to go inside, while he surveyed my home and to call police. I locked the doors and I called for the police. While I'm on the phone with dispatch, I frantically run over to the house to double check all the windows and doors. Suddenly, I hear a loud bang on my door. I inform the dispatch of the banging, and she informs me that the police weren't there yet. I thought I might be one of them. I thought I might be one of the gentlemen who helped me. I go to look out of the eye hole, and it's him, the intruder. He came back. He's banging on my door, screaming that I had his glasses and that he was not done with me. I absolutely freaked out. The dispatch attempts to calm me down, but I am losing my mind. She then says they are pulling onto your street now. You should hear the sirens. I did. Thank God. The intruder then bolts off. One officer jumps out of the passenger side while the car is still moving and chases after him. The second officer comes into my house, interviews me and the 2 gentlemen, collects evidence, takes photos. After some time of him being there, Sherry comes home and freaks out once the situation was explained to her. She said, "OMG, that could have been me." "Yeah, thanks, Sherry. It's all about you." The next morning, I am called in to identify a man that they had in custody. I pointed him out. I go into a little room, and the officers pull out an evidence bag. He asked me if the items were mine, which they were. They were my underwear and photos taken from my home. The officer informed me that the intruder had been stalking me for some time now. He estimates 3 months. He had made a nest outside our home on top of the hill that overlooked into our living room and kitchen. He is a known sex offender and a drug dealer. He then told me how lucky I was to get out practically unharmed. Others weren't so lucky. To the man who stalked me and broke into my house, let's not meet again. However, I would love to run into those gentlemen again. Every day I am thankful for them. I was living in a relatively nice apartment in downtown Memphis, working as an ophthalmic technician. I arrived home from work at a usual time at around 4:30 p.m., unlocking my doors, and went inside. I set my phone, wallet, and keys on the kitchen island, hearing my heavy metal front door swing shut loudly behind me, and began taking care of most errands around the house. Having grown up in a small town, it was a habit for me not to lock my door during the day, especially when my husband would be home soon anyways. I've never forgotten to lock my door once in 5 years since this day. I walked through my bathroom and into my large walk-in closet and began hanging up the laundry that I'd started earlier in the day before work. My front door opened, and I smiled with surprise. My husband was home a little early, and I was happily calling out for him. "I'm in here, love." I was met with silence, and slowly began to feeling that sinking feeling of something is wrong. I tried shaking it off, thinking my husband simply didn't hear me. Walked out into the living room. Standing on the other side in the kitchen was a complete stranger. He was male, older than me. I would estimate 50s, but it was hard for me to recall exact facial features or detail from this moment. And he was just standing there, staring at me. No ski mask, no weapons, just watching me. I wondered if he'd maybe walking to the wrong apartment and was going to apologize and leave. But as he continued to stare, I realized I needed to do something other than just gape at this stranger in my house. I stood taller, puffed up my chest, and attempted to look more threatening, which was hard to do as a small female, and used a loud, clear voice telling him to get out of my apartment, that he had no business being there. He completely ignored me, like I hadn't spoken. Then he began to pick up my things, cell phone, keys, and wallet. He picked them up methodically and put them into his own pockets. That's when it truly hit me that this person was dangerous. I was naive enough to believe that it was all a mistake until this moment. I ran towards the only other device that I knew that could get me help, my computer. I had to take a few steps closer to the intruder in order to reach it, but still had about 15 feet between us, so I knew I could grab it and run before he could reach me. As I picked it up and turned to run, I saw him start to move after me, and I sprinted back towards the bathroom because it was the only place I could go and put 2 doors between us, my bathroom door and my closet door. I slammed and locked the first door, and within seconds I could hear him messing with it, trying to open it. I ran into the closet and locked the door too, opening the computer and getting onto Facebook Messenger to contact my husband. I sent message after message pleading with him to call 911 and tell him that there was an intruder in the apartment. He got the messages within seconds and assured me that the dispatcher was on the phone with him, and he was leaving work himself to try and get here. I waited. The bathroom door opened and the intruder came inside. He moved to the closet door and started trying to break that door down too. Here's the part where people usually start giving me advice on how I should have acted, but all I can tell you is that I was frozen with fear, with shock. I didn't know, but I didn't scream or cry, or search for a weapon in the dark closet. I didn't brace the door or try to hold it close. I just kneeled in my closet and waited to die, because I just knew that's what was going to happen. People like to tell me that I lived in an apartment. Surely if I'd screamed, someone would have heard and come to help. Surely there was something heavy enough in my closet to use to defend myself. Hell, even the laptop would hurt if I hit someone with it. Why didn't I do anything? I don't really have an answer for that, but the closet door miraculously held. I heard frustrated footsteps go back into the living room area. I heard things breaking, bottles shattering, and my drawers and refrigerators and cabinets being flung open as things were torn off of them. I continued to sit in the closet, silently crying, wanting to leave, but feeling that death was inevitable. I feel awful about my selfishness in that moment, but I messaged my mom, who lived 15 hours away from me, and told her what was happening. I desperately wanted comfort, and to tell her how much I loved her. I'm not a parent, but I can only imagine the fear and helplessness I put her through, knowing her daughter was in danger, and there was nothing she could do to help. She messaged me continuously, begging me to keep replying. I told her I would as long as I could. The intruder started messing with the closet door again, mumbling disjointed words that I couldn't really distinguish. The front door opened again, and it was my husband shouting for me. The intruder walked out towards the living room and kitchen area again, where my front door was located. And I opened the door and darted from the closet to find my husband on the ground with him, pinning him in place. The man kept mumbling, at times yelling, but never really put up much resistance. Eventually the police found the apartment. It took them about 25 minutes to arrive. It just always seemed like this was an unusually long response time for a home invasion. They got my things back from the man and took him out of the apartment. To this day I am still grateful I got away with my life. I surely thought that was my last day on earth.